from music to movies. And you would think that a movie by Martin Scorsese starring Robert De Niro and Al Pacino would be a box office bonanza. But cinemas internationally and here in Australia are boycotting it. Why? Because it's been made by Netflix. Now, traditionally, cinemas have demanded a 90-day window between theatrical release and on-demand availability. But Netflix, in this instance, has only offered them 45 days at most. So is this a beginning of a schism between the film industry and the streaming industry? I mean, tensions have been bubbling for a while. Or is this really the death knell for the cinema industry at all? Let's talk to a couple of people on this. Firstly, someone who is a former cinema owner and is a regular on the show, Andrew Mercado. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi there, Jules.
Now, you have been an owner of a cinema, haven't you?
Yeah, just until a few weeks ago.
Okay, all right. So what do you think of this decision by major cinema chains to boycott a Martin Scorsese movie starring Robert De Niro?
Oh, well, look, it's a little bit silly, but I get what's going on here. Look, the situation is that obviously cinemas are scared of streaming. But you know what? Cinemas have taken great threats in the past. They survived the introduction of television. They survived colour television, they survived the VCR, and they survived big screen TVs and home entertainment centres. And they will survive this streaming war. You can't beat the experience of going to a cinema and watching something on a big screen with a group of people. Look, I think they're silly to have rejected a new Scorsese film. But the problem here is the window. When a cinema screens a film, there's sort of an understanding with the paying public, hey, come see it at our cinema, pay some money, because this isn't going to be available for you to watch at your house for about 90 days, 3 months. That's what happens with everything going on to DVD and, being released as a streaming service. There's usually a 3-month window. Netflix aren't doing that. They say a couple of weeks. You've got a couple of weeks of screens on the big screen, and then it's available on Netflix. And that's what is making cinema owners angry.
Do you think they're only releasing it in the cinema to try and get nominated for awards like the Oscars?
Yes, that's exactly why they're doing it. Because let's face it, Jules, we already have awards for movies that are made for TV. They're called the Emmys. But the Emmys aren't as prestigious as the Academy Awards. But to get an Academy Award, you have to screen in cinemas. And I would go a little bit further than that and say, well, you've actually got to go out there and see if people are willing to slap down their money and watch you in cinemas. Netflix are trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're like, come watch it here, but 2 weeks later you can get it for free at home. And I understand why cinemas don't want to play that game. Who's really going to do that except absolute fans? They should be doing a 90-day window on their movies that they consider worthy of Academy Awards. They should put it out there for 3 months like everybody else in the industry, every other distributor, and then maybe more cinemas would be willing to play their films on the big screen.
That's the voice of Andrew Mercado. He's a former cinema owner and comes on the show a lot to talk about TV and movies. I'm always grateful for his company. But we're talking about a bit of a schism that's opened up between streaming services and cinemas. Cinemas are refusing to play a Martin Scorsese movie starring Robert De Niro. I'm about to talk to somebody who works in a production house that makes movies for streaming services about his take. But Andrew, before I do that, I want to play you and Jay Grant, who we're about to talk to, something that Matt Damon said on 7:30 last night about the changing nature of the movie industry.
Oh, it's changed incredibly in the last 5 to 10 years. But if you look at the kind of movies that were being made 20 years ago, particularly like the drama, the $20 to $70 million drama, which really was my bread and butter for my entire career. Those movies just don't exist anymore because the DVD market is gone. So we've lost this huge source of revenue. And as a result, it's made all movies much more high risk. As a result, you see movies, particularly like superhero movies, They're very popular because you can because they play all over the world, right? There's not any cultural confusion or language confusion with them. It's clear who the good guys are and the bad guys are, and the kind of kitchen sink dramas that they used to make have pretty much migrated to television now.
Do you agree with that, Andrew Mercado, that if you're going to make a drama, a kitchen sink drama, it's got to be for TV?
Well, look, that kind of is the biz at the moment. But, I think Matt Damon's the nicest guy in the industry, so I agree with a lot of what he says there. But one thing that's going on at the moment is the only regular cinema goers who plop down money and will still go to the movies every week are older filmmakers. And, we would be very silly if we stopped making movies at cinemas for those people who still do want to leave the house and don't want to be like the young kids and stream everything on their mobile phone. But yes, it's getting harder to make those movies in the middle that Matt Damon is talking about.
So you're saying older Australians go to movies in droves, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are the only ones who still have the habit of going to the movies on a regular basis.
Okay, let's talk to Jay Grant. He's a partner at Real House Productions and he produces movies for streaming services. Welcome, Jay.
Hi, Jules. How are you?
Good. Now, you've heard Andrew talk about how the cinema industry is justified in taking a stand against this Martin Scorsese movie. Do you think that streaming services need cinemas?
Yeah, I think they do. And I'm sympathetic to a lot of what Andrew's saying. The point is that the digital revolution is well and truly upon us, and that everybody in the industry, the whole supply chain from filmmakers right the way through to distributors and exhibitors, need to rethink their business model. And we need to find a way to coexist. But certainly cinema has a future here if we can adjust and transition the industry correctly, and that's what we're about at Real House Productions. We're about making low-cost, genre-based films that are driven by consumer demand and that the public want to see, and we think they would have a home both in cinema and on streaming. And that the future is about growing the pie so that everyone gets a bigger slice, not necessarily having this binary argument between one and the other.
Jay, do you think that it's right that a film like Roma, which was made by Netflix, or even this film, The Irishman, do you think it's right that they're involved in film awards like the Oscars?
Yes, absolutely. They're films. They're filmed entertainment. And, I think the worst thing that could happen for cinemas is if the Oscars agreed that films that did not show in cinemas were eligible for the full range of awards. You just stop exhibitors putting up these movies at all. So Roma was a fantastic film, and I'm sure The Irishman, from all reports, is absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's Scorsese, it's De Niro, it's Pacino, it's Pesci, and I agree with Andrew. I can understand what the cinema owners are trying to do here in drawing a line in the sand, but I think the outcome of all of this argument is one where the industry has to find a way for better collaboration and cooperation between the digital world and the bricks and mortar cinema world, and they have to learn to coexist. And I believe that they can. We've just got to adjust this industry correctly, particularly here in Australia.
Is cinema just in danger of becoming the home of the superhero blockbuster, and maybe the really low-budget art house film? I mean, it seems to be, those two extremes seem to be surviving, but that middle ground that Matt Damon described, that $20 to $70 million movie that we saw quite often, doesn't seem to exist anymore.
Well, look, our company, Real House Productions, we're fairly new on the scene. We're a joint venture with very experienced American filmmakers, and we're actually, we're raising capital at the moment to expand our business, and we are about filling in that gap. But the one major trend that the digital revolution has brought to filmmaking, Jules, is it has collapsed the cost of filmmaking. So you don't need these large, these films that were costing $30 and $70 million can be made much, much cheaper now, and I think that's a win. I think here in Australia we can move away from art house and start really focusing on genre pieces, which are, thrillers, horror movies, slasher movies, looking to get young people back into cinemas. I think if we can produce low-budget genre pieces like we were doing with, Mad Max and these other great films in the 70s and 80s, we'll be able to bring young people back to the cinemas, and I think it'll become more of an experience for them to go and see what they want to see, and I think they still want to get together. But Andrew made a very good point there. At the moment, with what's being served up at cinemas, they're largely selling tickets to older people, and that's not going to be a sustainable business model. So we've got to work with what the streamers are making that is enticing a younger audience and finding a way to get that audience out of their homes and experiencing the films together in cinema.
That's Jay Grant. He's a partner at Real House Productions, and he basically makes low-cost genre movies for streaming giants like Netflix, Stan, Apple TV and Disney. And we're asking, can streaming services and big cinemas coexist after this rift has blown up between them over the latest Martin Scorsese movie? Teresa has called on 1300 222 891. Hi, Teresa.
Hi. I didn't come in at the beginning of this conversation, but I pricked up my ears when it was said about older people going to the cinema, which we do, and we're movie buffs, we're pensioners, whatever. But because the video shopper's gone, we do have one of these massive TVs. We do like to watch it at home as well. But we cannot afford to be a member of every single... We can't do Stan, we can't do Netflix, we can't do Foxtel, every single individual one. But we are happy to pay for a movie that we want to see online. We can't go to these machines that you see outside of the shopping centre because they're all big bang Hollywood comedy that we don't like. My husband and I have got different tastes. I'm art house, foreign films. So they're actually missing out. I mean, we still do go to the cinema, but they're still missing out on a chunk of what we would do because we are movie buffs and the DVD shop is gone. But I want to get a film for a Disney one that will be owned by someone else now. I mean, how many? Even on the drum, I saw a high-tech guy, young, and I instantly thought this guy must be saving up from Sydney Mortgage because he also said this is about the beginning of the year. Oh, but we can't be a member of everything. Yeah. And it's the same for pensioners.
So, Teresa, would you prefer to go to the cinema or would you prefer to watch these movies at home?
Both.
Okay, so you like to do both.
And we also do the genre movies on SBS, and there are some ABC
Do you think there's enough cinema being produced for your age group at the moment?
Not really. We don't get enough art house and foreign films.
Okay. All right, Teresa, thank you for your perspective there. Let's go back to Andrew Mercado, former cinema owner. Jay was saying, Andrew, that if a lot of older Australians go to the movies, which means maybe, that market's going to die out in 20 or 30 years. So, I mean, is that a problem for cinema owners?
Look, he does. Joe makes a very good point with the younger viewers. I mean, what's going on with young kids at the moment is they're not going to the movies on a Friday and Saturday night the way that you and I did when we were kids. When we, got our first pay packet and we were going out with our friends, we'd go to the movies on the weekend. Kids today don't do that. And Jay's right. We have to find ways to get those kids back into the cinema. And one of the things I used to do at my cinema with those family films, with the animated films and the little kids coming with the parents, I used to make an extra effort with those kids in the small town and, talk to them and make them feel welcome and call their name out over the PA so that my hope was that when they got to become teenagers, that they would keep going to the cinema on a regular basis because it held such fond memories for them. And that's exactly what Jay's talking about. We have to all cinemas need to make a special effort to young kids to make them feel welcome in that environment because it's true. They are the future.
Andrew Mercado, thank you so much for your time, and also to Jay Grant. He's a partner at Real House Productions. It is 24 minutes past 4.